Spring football is over, and we all have hope in front of us, and everyone's undefeated. This is the time of year where lies will be told. What are the biggest ACC overreactions?
You're talking ball with the ACC Squad, sponsored by Game Time. From Florida State to North Carolina, from Syracuse to Miami, and from NC State to California, it's the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network, bringing you scoops, breakdowns, and the most comprehensive preview of the upcoming ACC weekend. Hang on, it could get loud, it could get heated, and it will definitely be fun. Squad up, you're part of the ACC Squad.
Shout out to the everydayers, and thank you so much for making the ACC Squad your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And on this ACC Squad, we'll talk about a record $45 million average to each school distributed by the ACC 2023-2024 academic year, what it means and why it's a bit of a mirage. Speaking of mirages, so college sports is going to appoint a CEO after the House versus NCAA settlement, which will supposedly solve all of the problems in college athletics. We're not buying it. But guys, let's talk about overreactions. Now, inspired by CBSSports.com, put out an overreaction for every ACC football program after spring ball. Some of them are kind of weak, but I thought the Boston College one was interesting. So we're going to let AJ Black from Locked On Boston College. By the way, we also have Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack, and I'm Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. But so AJ, the overreaction for Boston College, and I'd love to hear you speak on this. The Eagles are better off without quarterback Thomas Castellanos, who transferred to Florida State. Agree or disagree?
I agree, because I've moved past the end of last season, because it was a mess for him. It was just like the way it ended with Boston College. I just think in terms of for him and for Boston College, a fresh start is best. He gets to go play for Gus Malzahn, a offense that is much more tailored to what his skill set is. I think he could be much more successful as long as he stays healthy. And for Boston College, you got Bill O'Brien, you've got this offense that's much more pro style that doesn't do a lot of what Thomas Castellanos did. It was kind of, jamming a round peg through a square hole. I think you have Grayson James or Dylan Lonergan, the transfer from Alabama. One of those two, and I honestly at this point couldn't even tell you who's going to start. Even watching practice, I thought both looked pretty good. I think they're going to be a better fit for what Bill O'Brien wants to do, which is to really manage and put together an offense that can throw the ball. So I think, without Thomas Castellanos, and I know he was explosive. I know he made big plays in 2023. I mean, even to start 2024, that game against the Seminoles, which I'm sure opened their eyes to for the second straight year, what he can do. I think BC they needed someone different to do what they needed to do.
Well, in that case, that sounds like you said, both parties are better. But I want to, in particular, look at Thomas Castellanos is better without Bill O'Brien. I have said this a million times, and I'm going to keep saying it here today, even to AJ's face, because AJ knows I love him, and I'd never throw a rock and hide my hand. What type of terrible coach is forcing a square peg through a round hole? We saw Nick Saban adapt what his system was from when he had Brody Croyle up through when he had Tua Tagovailoa. All of a sudden, those offenses look unrecognizable. And why? Mm-hmm. Because a coach who wins national championships and does good things says, well, wait a minute now. My talent ain't for this. My talent can't do this, which is why I've always had doubts about Bill O'Brien as a coach. And I'll never stop having those doubts until he proves me wrong. And by prove me wrong, I mean I need a 9-win season, 10-win season from him. Because, again, I just don't believe in him at all as a head coach.
Okay, hold on a second. So I have to defend Bill here. Thomas Castellanos wasn't supposed to start at all last year. He was supposed to be benched. He was going to be benched at the end of summer camp, and Grayson James got hurt. He did something with his chest, and he didn't play again until that Syracuse game. So, I agree with you. You probably should have. What Jeff Hafley did the year before was much more tailored to what Thomas Castellanos could do. You then tried. They really, really wanted to make him a pocket quarterback, and it was not going to work. It just wasn't going to work. And so, yeah, it goes back to what you said. I get that a little bit, but I think Bill is that kind of coach where he's just going to get his type of guy, and whether you agree with him or not, Kenton, that's what he does. And as you said, maybe it's going to hold them back, but it's year 2. We'll have to wait to see what they do.
Well, and guys, I'm super intrigued to see how Castellanos does at Florida State, because AJ Black, you mentioned the Gus Malzahn factor. I mean, that's who he started his career with at UCF. Malzahn was his head coach at the time. It's going to be an offense that's more friendly to his attributes. But then at the same time, for what it's worth, I heard some, kind of negative reporting coming out of Florida State in spring in terms of how Castellanos was doing. But even that in itself is difficult because Florida State had their spring football so locked down, like they didn't want anybody to see what was going on down there in Tallahassee, or up there from where I sit in Tallahassee, maybe down there for you guys. It's hard to know what's real and what's BS coming out of that. But yeah, I mean, for, a Florida State team that is looking to, they went 2-10 last year, which seemed like a complete anomaly. And now their FanDuel over-under is 7.5 wins for this year. So they're expecting, at least a 5 to 6 game improvement in wins this year. To see how Castellanos fits there, I'm super intrigued to see it.
Starting the season off against Bama, that's going to – sorry, you're getting to go ahead.
Oh, no. By all means, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, starting the season off against Alabama, that's going to be a test in itself. And can he get out of that game? We saw what Florida State's offensive line looked like last year. Obviously, they Norvell rebuilt it all. And so the hope is that that's going to be much better. And if the offensive line's good, Castellanos can cook. You're playing Bama, though. Is he going to be able to run that offense that beginning game? That's going to be a real, real big test for him.
I absolutely agree 1,000%. And that to me is why I look at this and I'm like, I wish that I could say this year will be indicative of who Thomas Castellanos is, because I'm a big Thomas Castellanos believer. I think that guy is fantastic. I think that he's going to be really good, but you're still looking at a situation where Florida State has rebuilt not just their offensive line, everything. Receiver core rebuilt, tight end room rebuilt, running back. There's not a single position where you're seeing a very high amount of continuity from last year to this year. And you're looking at a new coordinator. So you're looking at all these new parts, and we're saying, hey, figure it out in one spring. Gel it together in one spring, which is never the ideal situation for a quarterback.
Yep.
So going on to their overreaction on Miami, Kenton and I had a little fun with this last week on Locked On ACC. You're not exactly going out on a limb here when they say no ACC team will be better in the trenches. Now, I mean, obviously, I expect Clemson to have really good trench play. Louisville's offensive line is really good. But when you're talking about a Mario Cristobal coach team, possibly having really good offensive line play, I mean, is that an overreaction? To me, that's a reaction at best.
Yeah, I mean, I look at Clemson. I mean, they're going to be the best. I mean, like, right on paper, you look at what Clemson has, and that defensive line is going to be special. Like they have so much there in the offensive line. I mean, this is the year it feels like Dabo's got it clicking. And so for me, like I look at the trenches as a piece of what makes a really good team, right? And Clemson has it. Like Clemson has I think to me, they're the best in the ACC for that.
I mean, if I'm talking about Clemson and Miami, they're close. They're really close. But I would say the difference is I think Clemson has more depth on the defensive line that kind of separates them from Miami. Because if we're talking about defensive line top end, Ruben Hurricane Bain can keep up with anybody. He can't, right? Him and Parker, that's a wash. But then you say, okay, who do we have behind him? If he's hurt again or, whatever the case may be, knock on wood, because I hope he has a wonderful, successful, healthy season. But if you're saying, hey, after the first guys stop playing, because, all of us know ball, I play defensive line. You can only get those guys for 50 snaps a game, absolute tops. So what happens for the rest of those snaps? That's where I would believe an advantage will come in for Clemson defensively. Offensively, though, I do think that Miami is right there neck and neck with them. I would say slight edge to Clemson because of depth, defensive line wise. But again, fantastic trench play on either one of these teams. I don't think that either one of these teams will be looking up having a Florida State situation from last year.
You know, someone who had a real overreaction on Miami was Danny Cannell on the Cover 3 podcast. We'll talk about that. Plus, we've got to talk about college sports' new plan on enforcement. You want to keep it locked right here. I'm Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. We got Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack, AJ Black from Locked On Boston College. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of The Squad. You want to keep it locked. My friends, Stanley Cup playoffs going on, NBA playoffs going on, and it's getting better and better as we get closer to the championship round. Every night in the NBA delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Guys, what I love about FanDuel is whether you're a veteran, experienced sports bettor or you're a novice looking to get into it, FanDuel is so user-friendly. It's so easy to understand. They're going to help you become a pro. And guys, if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet, and if that bet wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you for making the Locked On ACC Squad your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, check out our other shows. AJ hosting Locked On Boston College, Kenton co-hosting Locked On Wolfpack with Grayson Boone. I host Locked On Canes. So, Kenton, when we talk about overreactions and bold predictions, Danny Cannell, who is my sworn enemy, he actually offered to buy me a mask to hide my face if his prediction comes true, that Miami is going to go 2-3 in their first 5 games, which would mean they would have to lose to all of Notre Dame at home, which could happen. Miami could lose that game. Florida at home, which I guess could happen. And Florida State on the road, which I think Miami wins that game. So he's got Miami starting 2-3 on the year and finishing 5-7. Now, I think Miami's floor is probably 6 or 7 wins. If they're winning 5 games this coming season, heads are going to roll. Cristobal, entire staff would probably be fired after that.
I think Cristobal would need to be fired too. 5 wins at Miami?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no. You cannot have that. And even beyond that, this is a year where something catastrophic would have to go wrong for them to only have 5 wins. You look at their schedule, after that first 5 games or so, it's not exactly a murderer's row. It's not exactly a schedule I'm looking at saying, this is unmanageable. You can't do nothing with these teams. The reality for Miami, I am a guy that does not believe in Carson Beck. I don't believe that Miami will be in contention for an ACC championship. But to say that you believe that this team is a 5-win team, brother, I think there's a very wide margin between 10 wins last year, were a couple of bad plays away from being in the ACC championship, and a 5-win team this year. Absolutely not.
Yeah, you look at Kenton. You brought up a good point. You look at their schedule. Once you get past Florida, you have Louisville and SMU. Those are going to be tough games too. But you end the season with 4 straight games against Syracuse. I don't buy in. I'm not buying on Syracuse at all this year. NC State, Virginia Tech, and Pitt. That's 4 games that the Hurricanes should be big favorites in. And you've gone out. You've got a transfer portal class that's one of the best in the country. You have one of the best, depending on what Kenton's saying, like Carson Beck is supposed to be one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC. Whether he is or not remains to be seen. But that would be an absolute catastrophe if Mario Cristobal cannot win more than 5 games. Like, this team should be playoff caliber. They should be ACC championship caliber on paper when you're looking at it. And if they don't hit that, that's going to be a gigantic disappointment. I mean, I would say 9-10 wins should be more what I'm assuming what the goal is going to be for the Hurricanes. That when you spend that kind of money to bring Carson back in here, you got to be able to win those kind of games, and you obviously brought a lot of talent around him too.
By the way, the
if you can't beat the mighty Stanford Cardinal,
yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Don. Go ahead.
I was going to say the Kenton Gibbs Carson Beck hate, for as much as I'm a Miami guy, the primary reason why I want Carson Beck to play well this year is so I can text Kenton during every Miami game. Because if the opposite happens, if Beck struggles this year, I'm going to be getting those texts from KG. Kenton, I told you so. You guys bought a lemon.
Donno is a liar. He will not be receiving text me. He will receive FaceTime calls mid-game. Say, what was that read? Alex Aquaminius Donno, what was that read? Explain it to me like I'm in 5th grade. I'm not a texter. But no, I will say this. You talk about the schedule and what's tough and what's not and all that good stuff. I look at these games and I see 5 that I would say these are like can't lose games. You can't lose to Bethune. You can't lose to South Florida. Arguably, you can't lose to Florida State right now, but I'll even give you the benefit of the doubt on that one. You cannot lose to Stanford. And Syracuse by that time, because of the way their schedule is set up, because of how many playoff teams they have to play, that team will be beaten, battered, and bewildered by that point. So you're looking at, what did I just name? 4 or 5 games right there where you're like, hey, I can't lose those. And Virginia Tech and Pitt, I highly doubt both of those teams are good and competitive at the end of the year as well. So you're absolutely looking at a bunch of games that you can't lose. And I'm being very generous to my alma mater, NC State, because while I believe that offense is going to light it up and CJ Bailey in year 2 is going to be fantastic, Hollywood Smothers in year 2 is going to be fantastic, that defense, we may – I hope they're opportunistic, as the analysts say, about bad defenses that get turnovers every now and then. But, it's a very, very light schedule down the stretch. If they can stick together as a team and kind of withstand that early bit of the schedule, I think they'll be just fine.
Now, moving in, guys, to the big picture in college sports, this was an underreported part of the House versus NCAA settlement. I'm just starting to kind of catch wind of this week. ESPN wrote a big article about it. Now we're expecting the House settlement to pass. I know they've been kind of haggling with the judge over terms like the scholarship limits, but the House settlement is going to pass. And guys, shortly after it passes, they being the Power 4 conferences are going to collaborate on making this hire. They're going to hire a CEO of college sports. Now, this is going to bring in a historic change because for the last how many decades, the NCAA has been in charge of enforcing their own rules to mixed results. Like I remember when the NCAA used to have teeth, and that's not necessarily a positive thing because sometimes the punishments they would dole out are, I'm a Miami guy, so I have to complain. Sometimes the punishments they doled out in the past would be ridiculous. But, for the past close to a decade, the NCAA has had no teeth because every time they've tried to pass any sort of discipline, they get sued into oblivion because all the state laws are different and antitrust violations come up. So the NCAA, after the House settlement, they will no longer be in charge of enforcing rules. They're going to, look at things like eligibility and more administrative stuff. So you're going to have a college sports CEO, which they say is going to be someone from outside sports that sports fans are not necessarily familiar with, that's going to have enforcement power. This is part of the ESPN article. While sources caution the documents that have been circulated are still in draft stage, sources say the draft includes language that the CEO will make, quote, final factual findings and determinations on violations of rules. The CEO will also impose such fines, penalties, or other sanctions as appropriate. Now, they imply that the schools will have no choice but to accept these penalties, saying that they will have to accept these rulings as final, with the exception being if a school or athlete wants to challenge the discipline, they'd be required per sources to engage in the arbitration process. Per sources, when cases do end up in arbitration, under the procedures that govern arbitration, subpoena power is a potential option via the discovery process, an authority that was not available during NCAA investigation. So, guys, the question in my mind is, this all sounds, I guess, straightforward, but is the CEO going to have the same obstacles that the NCAA had in enforcing their rules? In fact, they go on to say that that congressional oversight would still be needed to help create a legal framework in a new system. So, I mean, AJ, do you want to buy the first round on this one? Do you think this is really going to change, or is the CEO going to have the same problems enforcing rules that the NCAA is going to have?
I feel like we're just kind of like circling the wagons here, this seems like it's the same thing over and over again. We're gonna put in a CEO, and then we'll have a few rulings, and then someone's gonna get upset, and we're gonna have a lawsuit, and then the all of this is gonna get blown up again, or there's gonna be a team or a conference that gets upset by something that happens that gets ruled against them. Then we're going to get to that point where we keep talking about where they're going to break away from the NCAA, have this whole new thing, and then all of this is going to be moot. It sounds great on paper. You need some sort of, obviously there needs to be some sort of, they've got to put their ducks more in a row than where it is right now. This is why we're in the situation that we're in right now. I'm skeptical of all this stuff, like the House settlement, all these things that are coming up, the salary cap that they keep talking about. I don't know. I feel like we're in a new age, and it's not a bad thing for some of it because the athletes deserve to have the rights that they're getting now. I just feel like the new age also brings that we're going to be having more lawsuits that are just going to challenge all this stuff, and we're just going to keep going in a circle, and all of this is just going to keep repeating itself.
This is why Donno and I have been screaming for the longest. There needs to be a CBA. There needs to be unionization. There needs to be everybody sit down at a table and let's agree to terms here. The NIL rabbit is out of the box, okay? This is something that we've opened Pandora's box. I don't think we'll ever be able to close that fully. I think with rev sharing, there may be a cap on hey, doesn't matter how much revenue you get, only so much can go to players. But NIL is individual citizens and companies deciding how much they're going to pay. Nobody who can control that. If tomorrow we all got a call from David Locke saying, hey, you all shows are so great, we're going to make sure all of you start making $100,000 per month. Who could come in and say that's not the case? They're not providing that level of value to you. That's just what it is. It's you can't really do anything about that. But everything else in between, the legislation and the rulings and the enforcement of the rules, that can be bought in a meaningful way where it's hey, these are the hard and fast rules. Hey, you can provide this, and that, and the third. You cannot provide this as the institution. Now, it's just like the tampering thing that Donno and I have talked about a lot. There are certain back channels that you'll always hear about where it's you can't provide things that I want to keep our clean rating. So let's say the Patino package to a player. You can't provide that to a player or anybody coming to campus. There will be some shady third-party business that's loosely connected. That's oh, yeah, come on down. We'll show you the greatest time you ever had, 16-year-old young man that we want badly to come here. That's certain things are unavoidable. But again, the things that are avoidable could be avoided by saying, hey, we need to sit down. We need a collective bargaining agreement. We need unionization. We need to have very clear parameters for what is and is not legal.
Yeah, well, a couple things I'm thinking about, and I'm just thinking out loud here. On the one hand, I wonder, since a lot of times the NCAA, you felt like they were working against the universities in this weird antagonistic way. The fact that it's going to be the Power Four conferences who appoint the CEO, maybe it feels like this person will be kind of a puppet that maybe runs it in a more logical way that's not working against the university. So that's more of a positive thought that I have, but more of a negative thought that I have. And we all cover ACC schools, and we know that the ACC doesn't exactly get treated fairly these days. Well, we have these college football playoff talks, and the ACC is probably going to get 2 auto bids, and the SEC and the Big Ten get 4 auto bids apiece. Now, I'm wondering, when this CEO is appointed, the Power Four conferences will have input, but you can't tell me that the SEC and the Big Ten won't have more input in picking this CEO, and maybe the CEO will be more favorable to them than they are to the Big 12 and the ACC. So that is a concern that I have. If like, speaking purely hypothetically here, if Miami and Wisconsin have a tampering dispute, maybe the CEO might be more likely to look towards the big. It's purely hypothetical. The CEO might look more towards the Big Ten school than the ACC school.
Exactly. Even if a player were to do something like circumvent the portal entirely and just like unenroll from Wisconsin, hypothetically, of course, all hypothetical, and just enroll in Miami, what would we do at this point? But that is a legitimate concern. I think that we all come in with our biases for different things and all that good stuff. And no matter who you are, you're going to have a bias, because even we're speaking as ACC guys. Did y'all know there's a Locked On Sun Belt? That guy's probably like, well, if the Power Four pick him, what is he going to do to the Sun Belt? How is he going to, So regardless of how you cut it, how you slice it, there's going to be an argument for bias here. I think that the goal should be to get somebody who is as objective, playing it as down the middle, playing it as I don't have a vested interest in anybody as possible, as opposed to somebody who's coming in like let's say, many people float around Nick Saban being the CEO of this thing. And it's like, for obvious reasons, that would be exactly, that would just not be good. We love him and Miss Terry on TV. There's reasons that folks like him, and none of our old coaches should be it. We shouldn't see, a Mark Richt or a Adazio or a Mac Brown. None of those guys should be doing it. By the way, I love me some Adazio. But anyway, none of those guys should be the CEO either. It should be somebody who, again, is refined in the legal side of things to talk the legalese, as opposed to somebody who is very in-depth and entrenched in the sports side.
Coming up next, the ACC for the academic year 23-24 distributed a record amount of revenue to their member institutions, and that number is probably going to be even higher for the next fiscal year. What does it mean? How good is it? Is it a mirage? You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on the ACC squad. So AJ, I was pleasantly surprised when that 45, average 45, a few schools earned even more than 45 million, average of 45 distributed to the 14 long-term members of the ACC, which was only about 8 million less than what the SEC schools earned for that fiscal year. So maybe that gap, at least, recently, was not as wide as people thought. I think the gap is going to widen year after year, but the ACC, I think, closer than people thought.
Yeah, I mean, they're third in the power conferences, so that's a positive. But let's be real. You know that Clemson, Florida State, they're looking at that going, hey, it's still $10 million less than what than the Big Ten and the SEC are making. So I look at that and I say, you know what, they got a good point. And I think this again goes back to the health of the conference. I also wonder how much more they'd make each team if we didn't have to have all those legal costs, because I heard that was also a big expense as well. We had to settle a whole bunch of lawsuits made by a certain couple teams. So that was also a piece too, but I'm just busting here. So, it's good. It's good to see that that it's improving. I know that's a big thing with Jim Phillips, like to continue to find, he's finding those pennies in the couch. That feels like what he's doing for every little new thing that he has, is like, here's a couple, you find a couple quarters here, a couple quarters there. It's still not making the gap is still going to just be bigger and bigger every year. And we know it's coming, and we're just waiting for that tidal wave to hit. And right now it's a small little wave, but it's going to get bigger and bigger.
But Donno, can we do the math on this real quick? How much are the Big Ten and SEC paying out this year?
It's 53 for Big Ten, I think.
50. It was 53, I think, for the SEC, and then even higher for the Big Ten. But they're both so the SEC, they're just in the infancy of their new TV deal, so the money's going to keep going up. They also brought in, a couple new teams last year, Oklahoma and Texas, but yeah. Now, with that being said, everybody makes 45, right? That's the average, right? That's just about the average. This is how much everybody's getting. How much are Clemson? How much is Clemson set to make in this year with 45 plus Success Initiative plus
ratings initiative, you are not like, while the gap may be widening and while it may be so wide at a point that you're like not necessarily ahead of the Big Ten and SEC, right now they objectively are. A team like Clemson did the deal. They did their part of the thing and won. The original success initiative was created to say, we will give you the right to earn more. And then somebody went and shot a tour date. Somebody went and put up a James Harden playoff performance of 2-10 on us. We can't help that. We can't help that. Clemson, who did their part, went to the playoff, won the ACC, did all the things, they made money. SMU, who was not even supposed to make anything, as a part of the success initiative, don't they get paid, or is it automatic zero even if they go to a conference championship?
Ooh, that's a good. I don't know. That's a great question. I feel like they should for the initiative. I know they're technically making zero revenue, but they should get something for the initiative.
But you get what I'm saying here. If you show up and you win, you be the teams you're supposed to be. You be the heavy hitter you're supposed to be. You would be right there with them or ahead right now. Because Clemson is. The money says they're ahead right now, or at least even with those teams. Florida State, you're not there because you didn't win. You didn't win. And you could make the argument of long-term is we need to do things, and that's different, which is fine. But again, I'm saying if we're looking at the short-term and immediate, the top dogs in the ACC are not being hurt in the way that they're purporting themselves to be, where it's like, oh, God, how do we keep up with everybody else? They've got all this money and we're so poor and lonely. Indiana went to the playoff after 1 year with mostly James Madison transfers, okay? If you got ball players and you got a good coach, you can make it happen. But for whatever reason, we keep this idea that you need a $20 million roster, you need a lazy river in your facility, you need a barbershop and 12 different Xboxes in your facility, which we've seen from Oregon. It doesn't win national championships.
Yeah, well, we'll leave it on that note. He is Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. We got AJ Black from Locked On Boston College. Always a good time on the squad. Even with a slim roster, we still have a good time on the squad. And make sure for your next listen, you check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, NIL rumors, recruiting, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. For AJ and Kenton, I am Donno. We'll talk to you guys next time on another episode of Locked On ACC on the Squad right here on the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.